A new car from Mahindra is always something to look forward to. Why? Well, mainly it's because due to the fact that they become crowd favorites really quickly due to their macho appeal or sheer road presence. Well, the TUV 300 then, Mahindra's all-new sub-4 meter SUV, is certainly something that we've looked forward to driving for a long time. The Mahindra TUV 300's designs are a complete U-turn from the over-the-top designs that we've seen them do in the last few years. And while some might not agree with us, we think this is one of the best looking cars to have come out of their stable in the last few years, simply because it is not showered and sprinkled with trinketry and unnecessary chrome the way the XUV 500 is. The same understated and well-designed language continues around the rear too, with all the focus going to the large tailgate-mounted spare wheel. The vertically stacked tail lamps and the rear bumper too are well styled, but the rear step sticks out like a sore thumb and should be immediately eliminated by Mahindra. While we particularly like the way the wheels have been designed on the TUV 300, we think that these 15-inch wheels are a little too small, and a set of 16 or 17-inch wheels, especially the ones available on the Scorpio, would have looked great on the car, making the car look much better on the whole as well. Get into the TUV 300 and you're immediately greeted with one of the best interiors we've seen on any Mahindra vehicle for a long time. There is no daft plum-colored interior or overly done AC vents here. What you do get instead is a really well-made beige and grey dashboard, and as we've seen on most cars launched recently, a nice piano black finish on the center console. We also like this almost brushed aluminium-like silver surround that goes over the center console, and the fact that it lends itself to the AC vents on both sides and the door handles as well. We also like the way Mahindra has set up the infotainment system and how all the buttons are easy to read and use, but we would have liked it much better, of course, if Mahindra gave the same infotainment touchscreen system that you get in the Scorpio and the XUV 500. The interior quality of the TUV 300, in terms of how well the plastics feel, is also quite great, and in fact is one of the best we've seen on any Mahindra recently. The TUV 300 is surprisingly spacious and has lovely shoulder room in the front seats. They are a little uncomfortable though, especially around the lower back area, and a little more padding would have done great, especially on longer trips. You do, however, get a lovely handrest which you could rest your elbow on, but it does hamper shifting your gears into second, fourth and of course reverse gear. The rear bench seat offers great leg room, headroom and of course enough wide space to have 3 average Indian people sitting here. If you have a long journey, however, there is a lack of under-thigh support which might get a little uncomfortable. But on the whole, it isn't that bad a place to be. The last row of seats on paper can accommodate 2 adults, but they're best left for children, and we would not really recommend them to anybody who wants to undertake a longer journey. You also get a host of cubby holes and bottle holders in the TUV 300, along with a large illuminated glove box that makes storing everything quite easy. One of the best aspects of the TUV 300, and one that surprised us most of all, is the way this thing rides over rough roads and potholes. Now we all know how bad Indian roads can get, and throw this at a couple of rough patches or some potholes and you'll be surprised at how well this takes all of it without much fuss. In fact, the ride is really comfortable up front and can be a little comfortable for the rear passengers, but on the whole, it is a surprisingly good package. The other thing we like about the TUV 300 is the fact that unlike some of the more modern SUVs we've driven recently, this still has a higher driving position, which gives you a better command over the road. Well, there is a slight blind spot on the A-pillar and the back is a little difficult to look out of, but thankfully you do get reverse parking sensors. Of course, a reversing camera would have been ideal, but Mahindra does not have that even in the top-of-the-line version that we are driving here today. The TUV 300 is still a frame-on-body construction and not a monocoque, and well, you cannot expect it to handle as well as a family sedan or even your typical hatchback. But it isn't that bad. and in fact is a much bigger improvement on the previous Quanto and even the Mahindra Scorpio, for example. Does it have body roll? Well, of course it does. Considering the fact that you're sitting so high up and it's a high center of gravity, there is a bit of roll when you chuck it through a corner really hard. But high-speed handling is surprisingly good, and on roads like the Bombay-Pune Expressway, it does feel really planted even at triple-digit speeds. If there was one thing that does disappoint us about the TU V300, is the fact that its engine is slightly underpowered than what it should be. While on paper the 1.5-litre 3-cylinder diesel turbo engine does provide 85 PS of peak power and an impressive 230 Nm of torque, you sometimes just don't feel it. From a standstill, or from 0 to 100 suppose, the revs do climb really slowly, and it does take a long time to reach 3-digit speeds. However, when you do get it going and when you do shift well through the gears, it does feel quite sprightly, especially in the city. That said, as we mentioned earlier, there just is a little bit of power that does lack, and if there was a little bit more power, the TUV would have been a great car to drive. We're also slightly disappointed in the way the gearbox is set up, and while most forward gears are easy to go through and you can find them quite well, especially when driving aggressively, the reverse gear does clash a little bit, which is quite annoying when you get to it. The TU V300 is a refreshingly good product from the house of Mahindra. It looks quite well, has a really well made and well designed interior, and is quite spacious. It doesn't even cost the earth, with about 7.25 lakhs getting your base model and about 8.40 for this top of the line one that we have here today. Well, its engine could have been a little stronger, but on the whole it's not a bad product. Where its value for money quotient would really start to appear though, is when it not only goes up against buyers that would opt normally for a Ford EcoSport, but also those who would go for a luxury hatchback like a Hyundai i20 or a Honda Jazz, or maybe even a compact sedan like the Ford Figo Aspire or the Swift Desire. And that is when things will really start getting interesting for this little compact SUV.